Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we'll Masechtas Bava Batra daf Kuf Ayin Dalid. We're going to begin on Kuf Ayin Gimel Mid Beis by the two dots about 10 lines from the bottom. So we're learning the laws of a borrower and a lender, and if you have a arev, a co-signer, what exactly is the din as far as going to the co-signer first? So v'im amar almanas she epara mimishi irtze. So it could make a difference if you stipulated that you can collect from whomever you want first, the lova or the arev. So Amar Rabba Bar Bar Chanan Rav Yochanan Lo Shanu El Shein Nechasim Lova. The only time, even with that stipulation, that you could do this, you can go to the arev, is if the lova basically has no possessions, he owns no land. However, if in fact the borrower does have property, you still have to go to him first. He says that that's what Rosh Gamliel says. Which is mashmet, there's a machlokas, machal Tanakama savar lo shna hachi lo shna hachi. It shouldn't make any difference. Even if the lova does have, you can still go to the arev. No chasur mexav hachitan. This is how you read it. Hamavas chaver al yidei arev. If you lend money and there was a co-signer involved, so when you parim in an arev, you don't go straight to the arev. V'im amar almanas sheparim imishi yirtze, you parim in an arev. However, if you stipulate that you can go to the arev first, then you can. But it depends. That's only if the lova has no money. But if he does, you still don't collect from the arev. That's because it's in arev. Now we're going to learn about a new level of acceptance. The kablon. When it comes to a kablon, again, which is a higher level of accepting of responsibility, so even if the lova does have, so you can still go to the kablon first. As we continue to kuf ayin dalad with aleph. And on this, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Omer, im yesh nechasim loiva echad zeh v'echad zeh liyipara mehen. If the lova has, then even if we're dealing with a kablon, you can't go to the kablon first. Rather, you have to go to the lova first, even by a kablon. Amar Rabba Bar Bar Chanan Rav Yochanan. What is the halacha? So kol makom sheshana Rabbi Gamliel mishaseinu halacha ma'asu. Whenever we hear Rabbi Gamliel, we generally pass like him with a few exceptions, and here's one. Chutz mi arev v'tzidon v'rayach reina. So this is the case of arev, our Mishnah. So says the Rashbam, Ela yiparim in hakablon. You could actually go straight to the kablon. Even if the lova has money, you don't have to go to the lova first, but you can always go to the kablon first. Okay. Rav Huna. On this, Rav Huna says the following. Halvehu vani arev. Let's say he says, I'm going to lend you, I'm the arev. Halvehu lend him, and I'll be the arev. Halvehu vani pareya, lend him and I'll pay. Halvehu lend him vani chayiv. Halvehu vani noisen. Kun loshen arvosein. All these languages put him in the category of a co-signer, now as an arev, not a kablon. And again, it's important because now that we know we passing the Rabbanan, the question is if the lova has. So the question is if it's a arev, so you have to go to the lova verse. If it's a kablon, you can go to the kablon verse. However, let's say he says tainlo. This is a different language. Says the Rashbam, tainlo is masar hamaman biyadai. Give the money to him, and I'll pay you. Ein kan lashon halva ela shulchusei. The kaimer tainlo ovid malva. So basically, he's almost insinuating that he's like the agent who's linked to the borrower. So tainlo v'ani kablon, tainlo v'ani pareya, tainlo v'ani chayev, tainlo v'ani noisen, kun lashon kablonosein. So now the question is like this: Iboilu. We know that halvehu is a lashon arvus, tainlo is a lashon of kablonos. Iboilhu, halvehu, which is a lashon of an arev, vani kablon, but you say you're a kablon, so it's like mixed words, mixed messages. Or tainlo which is a lashon of being a kablin, vani arev mai. So Rav Yitzchak, lashon arvus arvus, lashon kablonos kablonos. Even if you said an ambiguous language, but if you said the word arev, then you're an arev. If you said the language of, if you actually said you're a kablin, then you're a kablin. Even if what else you said isn't the normal language. Rav Chisda Omer Kulon Lashon Kablonos. No, actually, in all the cases above is Lashon of Kablonos. Bar Mahal Vehu Vani Arev, unless you specifically say Halvehu, which is a language of being an Arev, and you say you're an Arev. Rav Omer Kulon Lashon Arvus Hein Bar Mitien Loi Vani Noisein. That just says Vani Noisein, not Vani Kablon. Anyway, so we have these different opinions. This is what he says. Which certainly sounds like a lashon of kablonos. In that situation, the person is so much to the kablon that it's basically that you're not even lending it to the lova. You're actually giving it to the kablon. V'loi, that's not true. The love is not disconnecting himself from the malva unless the arev actually took the money himself. But until that takes place, so the lova is getting the money, so therefore you don't say the lova is completely off the hook. Okay. Hahu daina. So there was a court case that basically took the possessions from the borrower before he even went to claim anything to the loiva. So Salke Rav Chanin Bered Rav Yeva, so he removed it. So who was the smart person who did this? Ilav Rav Chanin Bere, must have been him. The Rav Yeva Ksavar Nichse Demar Inish Inan Marvin. Just as you don't go for the RA to the RA first, we don't repossess the possessions before the Lovik can just pay you in cash. So therefore it was wrong that it was taken away. Says the Rashbam. Dilma mafsile loiva. Maybe the loiva would have paid him back. Why did you disgracefully take his possessions? Why did you go and take away his land? He possibly could have paid you back with money. So therefore, you really had no right to have done that. Okay, all right. Now, before we let's really inish inan marvin yasei utanan hamavas chavero aline arev. If you have a cosigner, lo yiparim in the arev, you don't collect from the arev. V'kamelon lo yitave arev tchila. It just means that you don't go to the arev first, right? So he said, just like you don't go to the arev first, we don't repossess the possessions before the lover can just pay you in cash. So they had no right to go and take this property away. Look at this Taisus on the previous Amud, very important Taisus. So it says in the middle of the daf, on Kuf Ein Gimel Mid Beis, it says Chamish Midos Ba'arbus. B'Shem Rabbeinu Tam, it says there's 5 different elements of cosigner. Aleph, Hamal Val Yedei Arev Vo Asni Mimi Shirtze. Let's say you have a cosigner, but you don't make any stipulations. It doesn't make any difference. You go to the lova first because there's no stipulation. Makes sense. You go to the borrower first. Beis im hisna mimishi yirtze efra the enu nechasam loiva the hanu karkais. So let's say you do make a stipulation, even when we're talking about an Arev. Now again, we hold like the Rabbanon, that by an Arev, you're supposed to go to the loiva first. But what happens if the loiva does not have the hainu karkoi snifrim in arev tchila? So then, because the loiva has no property, so then you can collect from the arev. Perish im yirtza ladun im arev tchila v'im yirtza yitam in a loiva tchila. Fine. Gimel v'im yishlo nechasim loiva fil asni nifrim in a loiva tchila, which is what the Rabbanan said. Now, when it comes to an arev, even with a stipulation, if the loba has money, has possessions, you go to the loba first. Daled. V'kablin dahainu tein lo v'ani noisan lecha ben sheishon lechasam loiva ben shein lo yifrim in a arev tchila. So, or I should say, kablin tchila. This is the machlokus. We don't hold like Rav Shimon Gamliel. So when it comes to a case of a kablin, Taisa says that even if the loba has money, so you can still go to the kablin first. And then finally, 5, hey, noisim biad, yifrim in a arev lo min a loiva, she'ein limalve al ha-loiva klum. That if you gave it directly to the kablin, the loan, so then you have nothing, no ability, the lender has no ability to go to the loba. Okay, with that said, that basically just clarified a lot of what we just saw. Let's continue with the next piece. Oh, Arva. So you had this Arev. De pare lo malva. He paid off the lender. Mikmei de oidinhu liyasmi. Before he notified the assignment. So in other words, now the Arev is going to the assignment to be able to get the money that he paid, because the Arev paid the malva, but the reality is the lova still has an obligation. It's not like it's a free ride, because the Arev did you a favor, but now you should pay back the Arev. Says the Rashbam, he paid mishaloi para v'loi mishal yisaimim shal hispik l'tavim. They didn't claim from the Simon. But now the Arev is asking the Simon to get his money back. So, Amra Papa Prius Balchay mitzvah. When it comes to paying back a debt, it's a mitzvah. However, V'yasmi la b'nei mevin mitzvaninhu. They're katanim, and therefore they're not able to do the mitzvah as of yet. Says the Rashbam, Ha'arev ata nasa balchoiv, milvel pehu. It's like an oral loan. Mitzvah pyra. It is a mitzvah for them to pay it back. V'imisaimim pchusim yud gimel. If they're under bar mitzvah, the la b'nei mevin mitzvah ninhu. However, v'chi gadli, when they do get older, lishtoi dina b'hadayu, then you could do din with them. So, truth is, fine, but you can't collect from them until they become older. Rav Huna B'Redu Rav Yeshua Aimer Srari At Fasei. Maybe people will say there was a bundle of money over there. What does that mean? Says Rashbam. The truth is, even though they're katanim, they could do the mitzvah of paying back the arev. Hainu taima. The reason the lo goyve arev miyasmi adegadli, they shouldn't collect until they get old, until they become older. V'yedalitoin, they should then be able to make a claim. V'lachser acher dinam, to go after a court. Maybe the father already paid up this loan in his lifetime, right? Basically. So, in this case, it's not so clear that this loan was actually not taken care of. Maybe the father actually did have a bundle of money, and he already did pay off this loan in his lifetime. So therefore, because of this, in either case, the Arev cannot claim anything now. Kuf Ayin Dalam with Beis. So my Binayu. So then, what's the nafkamina? Says the Rashbam Kivan de Ben Lumar Ena Arav Goiva Achshav Miasmi. Either way, he can't collect now. So he can Binayu Kishachayev Moide. What does that mean? It says Rashbam B'Shas Misasai. The time where this man, the father of the Yisraelim, is about to die, he admits so he basically says, I owe the money, which means he did not pay it up in his lifetime. Rav Huna Gavi Miasmi, so he can collect. Rav Papi will Gavi Ad Godly. However, according to Rav Papi, he can't collect until they get the age of Bar Mitzvah. That's answer number one. Inami, the Shamtuhu Umes B'Shamte, that the father, says Rashbam Shlo Ratzli Par B'Chayev. The father didn't want to pay up his loans. They put him in Cherem. They excommunicated him. Obviously, again, he didn't pay this off in his lifetime. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been in excommunication. Okay, let's look at question 13. Mehema tamim shenemar al ha de'ein Ephraim milva peh min yisaimim ma nafka min tamim. Either because Priyas Bal Chayv is a mitzvah, and the Yisraelim are not b'nei mevid mitzvah yet, or maybe because story atvasei. And the nafkamina is either b'chayv moida, or, and it says in parentheses, o di omer tenu, o shemeis b'shamte. He died while in excommunication. Okay. Fine. Let's continue. So shalchami tam. So it was sent over from there. It was, says Rashbam, Heicha de Shamtuhu, where he was excommunicated, and he died in excommunication. Then we know for a fact, Shiamutu Umes B'Shamte, that's what happened, and obviously he never paid up his loans. Hilchasa Karav Huna Beredu Rav Yeshua. The halacha, in fact, is like him. It says Rashbam, the Gavi Miasmi, that you can collect in that case from the Yisraelim. V'amrinan Yasmi la b'nei mevin mitzvah ninhu. Fine. Meisvei. Arev shahaya shtar chayiv yoytzim etachas shadai. So you have an arev that has this debt on him. Enu gaiva. So it says he cannot collect from these Yisraelim, says Rashbam, ad de gadli Yasmi, until they become older and they can go to Beis Din, etc. Vim kasaboy. However, it's written his kabalti mimcha goiva. If it's actually stipulated by the lender, his kabalti mimcha min arev, that it was accepted from you from the arev, so in that situation, you could collect from the assignment. Now, Bishlam Rav Huna Rav Yeshua Mishkachasla Kishachai Moida. I can understand when he says Kishachai Moida, so you know that the monies are owed. Ella Lora Papa Kasha, they're not b'nei mitzvah. So what's the difference? They still shouldn't have to collect, have to pay. Shani Hasam Lachi Tarch V'Kasav his Kabalti. The fact that he wrote this, says Rashbam, to Havi Arev Muksak B'Shtar Sheish Lo'Aleihim. It's no longer considered like a milva b'peh. It's not a milva al-peh anymore. It's like written. V'lo chashiva milva al-peh, says Rashbam. Milva B'Shtar Moidu Apapa de Gavin and Miasmi. You could collect from them, from the assignment. The Lo Amrinan Hacham Mitzvah El Chayv. It's not a mitzvah anymore, it's an obligation. Umutelos Aleihim L'Pori Bal Karcham. And therefore, they have to pay up this debt. Okay. Hahu Arva de Ovid Kachavim de Paril Ovid Kachavim Mikmei de Letavinhu Liasmi. So basically the same case, except we're dealing with non-Jews. And let's see if that makes any difference. Amalei Rav Mordechai Rav Ashi Hacham Ravimi Magurayini Mishmei the Rava Afil Mandir Mechayshina L'Srari. Even the one who says that maybe we're concerned that this loan was already paid up and therefore we should wait until these kids get a little bit older. Hanimil Yisrael. That's only if the Malveh, the one who lent the money, is a Yid. If the one who lent the money was Avi Kachavim, Kivan de Basar Arva Azul, we know that they go directly to the Arev. That's their din. They don't first, as we saw in Taisus, you go to the Lova, and if the Lova doesn't have, then you go to the Arev. They always go straight to the Arev. So if that's the case, Lo Chashinin L'Srari. We're not chayshish that the father, who was just the Lova, paid it off, because it's understood that the Malva will generally go to the Arev first anyway. So the father, who was just the Lova, probably didn't pay off this loan. Even if normally you're not chayish, Hanimil Yisrael, above Kachavim, Kivan Didinayu Basar Arba Azli, since they typically go straight to the Arev, he love the Atvase Sarari Mikara. If he didn't pay it up immediately to the Arev, Lo Havi Mekabale, the Arev wouldn't have accepted this deal. In other words, perhaps the fact that they're so strict, the person who's an Arev would never have accepted this position. So look at the Rashbam. So the Lova wouldn't have paid him off. Because the father, who's a loiva, will not give money to the malva, who's an avikachavim, since he will collect again from the arev. So he won't pay him this loiva. So basically, he knows that this avikachavim would maybe do this trickery, that if I would pay him, he's going to go to the arev first anyway and pretend that he never got anything. Alternatively, we say no. The person would never, because they're so strict that you always go straight to the Arev, a person would not accept that upon themselves. Because you know that they're going to come after you first and not to the borrower. Therefore, he doesn't collect until they get older. Okay. Lo havi mekabel. Fine. So the question is, what our Mishnah? So our Mishnah mentioned. Let's read this Mishnah on Kufayin Gimel Mebez. A woman has a ksuba, and someone wrote as a cosigner for it. So now the husband wants to divorce her. So yadirena hana. So the Mishnah says we're concerned of a kenunya, because what could happen? The husband and wife can say, we need money, so I'm going to divorce you, and you'll go to the Arev will pay the ksuba, then we'll get remarried, we'll have all this extra money for ourselves. So therefore, the husband has to make a neder that he will not remarry her. Okay. So, Moshe bar Atzri, Arv de Ksubasa de Kaltehavi. So this person, Moshe bar Atzri, he was the Arev for his daughter-in-law. Basically, again, that if for whatever reason his son gets divorced, so then he'll pay the ksuba to the daughter-in-law. Rav Huna berei sumer m'rabanan havi. So Rav Huna berei is a sumer rabbanan udachika le milsa, and things are difficult for him monetarily. He doesn't have a lot of money. Fine. Now, the Rashbam points out another important point, that Atzri is a kohen havi v'i megarish sulumatzi mahadule. This is not an issue, because since he was a kohen, so he would not be able to remarry her anyway. So then there's no concern of potential kinunya, because he's not able to remarry her. So there's no trickery. So again, he has no money. So Rabbi Leika the Lezel the Natsvi Eitzel Rav Huna. Is there anyone that's going to potentially go to him and give him the following Eitza of Rav Huna? The Nigarsha Lidabesu, divorce, V'tezel and go, V'tigvi Ksuba Miavua, collect the Ksuba from the father, V'adir Nahadra, and then get remarried. Normally Rabba V'ha Yidrena Hanatanan. You have to make a neder that you can't remarry. Or Mulay ought to what? Called the Megarish Bebeidin Megarish. Who says that you just divorce her quickly and don't make this neder, right? Just do it quickly without based in consultation. Sophie Gali Milsa the Kayan who turned out again, as we said, he's a Kayan. Rabbi Hanu Nami Inchi Basar Anya Uzla Aniusa. After poverty comes poverty. In other words, he's already poor, and even though he would be able to maybe do this shtick, so he can't do it because he's a Kayan. Who's like a conniver. This is someone who wishes to sell his nechasim like Rabbi Shimon. So, in other words, it's the same form of trickery. So, how could you encourage someone, divorce your wife, and then remarry her, and then you can steal this guy's money, basically, from the ksuba? No, b'nai shani v'sumar rabbanan shani. You're right. Normally that's wrong, but here it was the father that was the arev. So there it's different. And also he's a Talmud Chacham, and therefore, again, we're not concerned. Question 14. Be'ez oifin sharl hasi eitza ve'enu rasha. B'no asur rabbanan. That's question 14. I arev who the father's an arev, a kaimel an arev diksuba l'mishtabit. There's a din when it comes to an arev. He's not mishubit to the ksuba. Kablan havi. Actually, he was on a higher level. He was a kablan. Kablan diksuba. I can agree if you hold when it comes to being a kablan regarding the ksuba afla delesle nichse labal mishtabed shaper, that in, let's say the baal doesn't have, then the kablan is obligated to pay for the ksuba. What are you going to say regarding a kablan if the loiva does have, or the husband? If he had, he did have. And then all of his things got ruined. So originally he may have had money. However, afterwards it got lost. That's Rashbam. So he did have, and no longer did he have. As we said, when it comes to a son, the father will accept himself as an arev and even pay off the ksuba. Ditmar. Arev the ksuba, divra kol mishtabed. The fact that you're an arev for ksuba, there's no shibud on you. Kablan the bal choiv, however, when it comes to a kablan of a bal choiv, divra kol mishtabed, and certainly you are. The question is the middle ground. Kablan the ksuba, which is very strong acceptance, but it's for ksuba, or the arev the bal choiv, pligi. Mar savi isle nichse leloiva mishtabed. If the lova has, at the time, even though he has nichse, then it works. Ileisle lo mishtabed. If he doesn't, not. Mar savi ben isle ben leisle mishtabed. Even if he has, it's the person still is mishtabed. The hilchasa. Okay, drum roll. Arev ben isle ben leisle. Whether he has or not, mishtabed. Bar arev diksuba, which is the most light. Diaf gav the isle labal, even if the husband does have, lo mishtabed. My taima, mitzvahu da'avid, the love midi chasra. He was basically doing a mitzvah, and she's not losing out, she's not losing money. What does that mean? It says Rashbam, mishtadech bezivugin. His intention was just to get people married. He wasn't intending to actually pay for all this. He just thought it would be a nice thing. Listen, who's losing out? You're both single. Let me get you married. Oh yes, there's a big suma. Okay, I'll take care of it. The truth is, he really did not have that in mind. Okay, we're going to stop there. Let's see a couple questions. TA 8. Arev de balchoiv o de ksuva ha'imishtabed. Okay, this is question. This is on. We just did this, which is kuf ayin dalad omid beis. Kuf ayin dalad omid beis. So arev de balchoiv. Let me just read it exactly as it says here. because this is obviously right here, TA 8. An arev of a Baal Chayiv, v'isle nichse kliyam mishtabed. Leisle nichse havi plugta. V'arev de ksuba diver kol ein mishtabed. So that's all I got. All I wrote was an arev for ksuba, everyone holds is not mishtabed. When it comes to an arev Baal Chayiv, arev bein is, it says here, arev bein isle bein leisle mishtabed. What does it say here? Arev de Baal Chayiv v'isle nichse l'kliyam mishtabed leisle nichse havi plugta v'hilchasa mishtabed. So I don't know why you'd have to write machlokas. Okay, but that's not the halacha. I guess because they didn't ask what's the halacha. Question TB9. Mehem atamim shenemru al hadin ifraim milva al peh mini yisaimim my nafki min hatamim. This is the same as question 13. This is TB9. We already know what the answer is, but let's just read what I wrote. Let's see if I got the right answer. It says Kuf Ayin Dalid Amid Aleph, Kuf Ayin Dalid Amid Beis. Mitzvah Yisaimim Rak Shehem B'nei Mitzvah. U'mechoyev Lasos as a mitzvah shel Priyas Chayiv shel V'yem O Dilma Hakesa Kfar Batik U'mayuchad, it's wrapped up. U'shalom es a Chayiv V'hemlo. It sounds like the way I wrote it is like the money's here, but it means it was like paid already. The himlo yoidim, it said they don't know. Hanav kaminish shchai moida noim haav min nidoy, excommunication b'chayrim. Okay, milval peg goyim in the yorshim in the kuchais. See that tomorrow's daf adkan.